What is Fundamental Paper Education Advanced Class? An apology for stopping uploading videos. Laziness reaches everyone. Okay, leaving the spam behind, let's start with the video. If there's any information that's wrong or that I forgot, don't forget to comment. The creator of this universe is Ejiluden. There is a comic that shows us the origins of Mr. Beryl as a child. If this video is supported, I will make a video about the comic. The comic is really good. And without further ado, let's start with the video. The animation starts in the same original way as Katie, but with a difference. We started with several students getting off the bus. The protagonist of this animation is Margaret and also her brother Marvin, who in the end are going to die like any self-respecting FPE animation. With that, we move on to another scene where he shows us more of the school and the new students. We move on to the appearance of Mr. Hotchkiss, Mr. Beryl's boyfriend. Mr. Hotchkiss is the crafts master. Then we move on to Mr. Shapley's class, who teaches the astronomy subject. Then we went to chemistry class with Miss Bloomy and her assistant Strontium. Sis appears, which I think is the representation of the creator. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. Margaret and her brother were with Claire until they saw some scratch drawings. I think they made the drawings. Those who drew the pictures were Zip and Eddard, accompanied by another bully Ram, then being attacked by Marvin. We move on to another scene where Mr. Hotchkiss has a drawing in the hands of a student who gets angry. I don't know why, but the chase begins. While the chase is going on, we see several characters. We see how Mr. Sis is angry with a student for taking out F with the intention of killing. We see how a student tries to escape but is caught. The student was caught by the dance teacher, Mr. Foxtrot. For me, one of the best designs and one of my favorites. Meanwhile, the girl arrives at a dead-end room blocking the door, but it would not be enough to stop Mr. Hotchkiss being brutally murdered by Mr. Hotchkiss. And in the end, Mr. Hotchkiss devours the student. We see Mr. Beryl passing by, somewhat sad, perhaps for not protecting a student, since as a security guard that is his job. Or maybe she's sad that Mr. Hotchkiss, her boyfriend, also commits cannibalism and murder like the other teachers. But he also commits cannibalism and murder, but only to intruders who sneak into the school. I didn't find the image, sorry. I wonder what the students taste like that the teachers devour them. We move on to how Mr. Beryl, Mr. Hotchkiss, Mr. Brewmeyer walk, with Mr. Brewmeyer being the school janitor. We pass where Bazile shows an image to the brother's warning about his missing son. On the other hand, Basileus tries to attract attention by jumping from the highest point, being the typical child who always wants attention at all costs. Mr. Eugene blocks the water so that the students do not get wet. I wonder if she kills or lets them live. We see the beautiful relationship between Mr. Beryl and Mr. Hotchkiss, how beautiful they look together. Meanwhile, we see how in the original story Zip and Chip are riding a boat while they almost crush Margaret and Riley and Oliver eating their soap. Zip and Chip being punished at the end by Miss Vorgas, the swimming teacher. What a beautiful scene where Claire and Engel love each other. In all universes they always love each other, even in the worst ones. Loud screams are heard coming from another area of the library, where the librarian Miss Cleto D would try to shut him up so he wouldn't make too much noise, where we see that the student demands the Necronomicon, a book or something like that. Miss Cledore's patience is running out because the student was making too much noise in the library. Miss Cleator punches the student but uses too much force, leaving him like a crushed and crumpled bill while the student falls. We go to the scene where Oliver should be, this time being replaced by Sis, and we see the book of Hansel and Gretel, but with changes. We go to a scene where we see Lord Hansel and a scary image of Mr. Beryl as they are connected. We move on to where Zip is replaced by Edgar and Lord Hansel scratching a wall. We see how Mr. Demi and his students sing a song. For me, the most important thing he's going to do in the animation hardly appears. We see Lord Hansel walk and release his power. Margaret goes through the library and we see how the student is left like a tornbill. Marvin was killed by Mr. Broomer. Because he killed him I don't know, but maybe Marvin threw trash and Mr. Broomer got angry and killed him. End of my theory. Margaret gets scared and tries to avenge her brother by stabbing Mr. Brewmeyer. Mr. Brewmeyer glares murderously at Margaret and the chase begins. Margaret goes into a hidden passage and Mr. Brewmeyer passes by. Margaret runs to the other side without looking ahead and crashes. Margaret ends up colliding with Yutta, Miss Hineda's pet, and starts making noise. Being that Miss Hineda worries about her pet and looks murderously at Margaret. A growl is heard and Mr. Broomer appears from behind with a murderous face ready to kill. Starting the chase again, this time added Miss Hineda. Mr. Hotchkiss appears in pursuit, ready to kill Margaret. Margaret angrily hits Mr. Hotchkiss hard on the leg. Wait, that pose looks familiar to me. While Margaret is escaping, she is caught by an arm and pulled into a hallway by Mr. Beryl. Meanwhile, the other three masters go somewhere else, still looking for her to catch her and kill her. Mr. Barrel covers Margaret with his wings so that she cannot be seen. Margaret looks scared and frightened, but Mr. Barrel gives her a kind and gentle look. Margaret is afraid and confuses that Mr. Barrel was going to kill her like the other teachers. Margaret throws a cross at Mr. Barrel, which affects him a lot. She runs to the forbidden hallways, I think, seeing an exit door, and gets excited enough to run towards the door. We see how Hansel appears in his normal form. Margaret gets scared and Hansel transforms into his demon form. Mr. Barrel arrives, saving and starting a fight with Hazel. Mr. Barrel shoots at Hansel, but this is useless. Hansel cuts the bullets. Hansel destroys the artifact in Mr. Barrel's eye. Mr. Barrel escapes and Hansel uses his power to cover the entire school with branches. Mr. Barrel keeps trying to save Margaret, but Hansel uses his power, damaging Mr. Barrel's leg. Hansel decides to hurt Mr. Barrel more, and Mr. Barrel releases Margaret so she doesn't get hurt. Hansel kills Margaret. We see the chaos that was created by Hansel's branches, as some are seriously injured and others dead. We see several teachers staring at something while Barrel is assisted, and we are shown Margaret's corpse. We see Basilaus removing the exit sign, being the culprit of what happened. We see some angry teachers staring, and the animation ends. But there is another animation where we will see what happens next, like 10 minutes after what happened. We see all the chaos that happened, some windows broken, the school completely covered. We see Mr. Barrel crying for not saving a student while Hotchkiss consoles him next to a student. Mr. Brorumer, very angry, tries to kill Basilos. I forget how to write his name XD. Well, back to the subject, Mr. Brorumer stops him, Murderbane, so he doesn't hurt him. Miss Grace watches Belial as he uses his powers to lift debris from the school. Miss Grace gives a thumbs up to Belial. There are many corpses of dead students, and Miss Elbrook gets excited when she sees her monetary salary go up. Some begin to clean up and remove branches from the school, rebuilding the broken things. Miss Thavel breaks a branch with her claws. Edward examines a branch as Zip flies through the halls. Oliver and Alice walk through the halls as if it didn't matter what happened. While Oliver spoke calmly, Alice just remained silent, listening. We see Lord Hansel's room, and Alice stares at the door angrily. A flying bird lands on Hansel's hand as Hansel looks at it calmly and happily. The door begins to open and Hansel turns around with a frightened look. We see Alice's silhouette, and it covers the whole room in black and attacks Hansel. Alice tells Hansel that he is invading her territory, and tells Hansel to tear it into pieces. Hansel mockingly apologizes and tells Alice that his best friend is at school. Alice tells him to fuck off. Alice walks away. Hansel simply says something in a mocking tone. And with that, the animation ends. Hi, Techno, I'm just taking advantage of this moment to say that I will try to be more active in uploading videos. And with that, the video ends. Until next time.